Hello, my name is Ian and welcome to my YouTube channel. So kind of an informal video today. I obviously haven't really planned much for this because it's the sort of thing that one doesn't really plan for. If you're used to watching my channel, generally what I talk about is music, especially progressive rock bands. I've always wanted to dabble in talking about film. But it's always been an area that I felt significantly less comfortable in, simply because with music, I have the experience of an education in music. Whereas with films, it's just the only education I've had is a lifetime of viewing and enjoying them. And in this case, David Lynch is one of those directors who is, or unfortunately was, an artist in, I would say, every sense of the definition. This man just ate, slept, and breathed art, and kind of the art life, that being a phrase that's associated with him. This whole idea that an artist smokes cigarettes, he drinks lots of coffee, or she, and they paint, or they make music, or they make films, or, whatever it may be. And, I get that David Lynch's work isn't for everyone. Obviously it's very specialist entertainment. It embraces the dark side, but it also celebrates the absurdity of life. And whenever I watch one of his films, I always go through this range of emotions from being like uncomfortable to being terrified to laughing a lot. Sometimes it's awkward, kind of an awkward situation, or, other times it's something that is like deliberately funny. And, just talking about my own relationship to this work, this body of work. I was first introduced to David Lynch watching TV late at night. Like when I was in high school. And I stumbled across a lot of films at that time, particularly like Stanley Kubrick films, such as Clockwork Orange, Eyes Wide Shut, but also films by people like David Cronenberg, like The Fly, Crash, Naked Lunch, and a film that I watched a few times on those late nights was Blue Velvet. As well as Wild at Heart, two movies that, struck me for their weirdness and beauty. But it wasn't until much later, in 2019 or so, I had just started my studio business where I built the shed, obviously with the help of my uncle, and there was a building company that actually built the shell of the shed, but it was basically like a family affair where we all got together, my mom, my dad, my uncle, and we built this studio. And so at that point, I was living in the place that I had helped build and was building a career out of. And I was trying to get beyond like so-called blockbuster movies or like big event movies, Marvel movies, that sort of thing, because for a while that's basically all there was to watch. I mean, it just seemed to dominate the landscape culturally for a long time, and I was just kind of getting sick of being constantly inundated with this kind of entertainment, and I was looking for something more. I was looking for something richer and deeper, and somebody recommended Twin Peaks to me. And I fell in love with that series watching it on my laptop. I was watching it on the studio computer with the sound turned up, and I would watch like an episode a night. And I knew about Eraserhead, particularly from being a fan of the band Rush, because Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson would wear the Henry Spencer pins, and you could see the poster in the background of some of the videos associated with the Moving Pictures album, especially Vital Signs, which is actually my favorite song on the album. There was some other things, like I was also a big fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I think Kevin Murphy had worn an Eraserhead shirt. in a couple of their live events. So I was always fascinated by that image, and I'd read things about it online, along with like other older films like Eyes Without a Face, talking about how shocking it was and how nobody knew how this film was really done, like especially the baby, like that effect was something that David Lynch has taken to his grave. We still don't know, or maybe we should never know how that was made. But so I was coming at Eraserhead very early in my career as a full-time artist, and I watched it alone one night with the sound turned up, and it was an experience unlike anything I've ever had before in my life. You've got the dark, macabre humor running through it, but there was also like the spirituality to it. And I've never been a particularly like religious person, but I've always been spiritual. And like I always read that the ending of that is arriving at some sort of spiritual completion. And obviously the end of the film is so much more resonant now. I just watched it last night, and it seems to have taken on a deeper meaning now that he's gone. And I don't know if that was his intent or not, but it changes it a little bit if you go back and watch it. So this film had a profound effect on me, mostly because I think that it portrays specifically anxieties about becoming a parent, and how that affects one's life and career path. And I liked the fact that this movie was showing me that there was more to life than, oh, let's just have a boring job and get tied down and get married and have lots of children, and that's your life, and you give up your dreams. And so that's what Eraserhead taught me, was about following one's dreams and how important that is, and how important it is to stay true to oneself. And like you watch, to me, like a great companion piece to Eraserhead is the documentary The Art Life, where Lynch is talking about how around the time he was making Eraserhead, his first daughter was born. And I can't remember if this is mentioned in the documentary or not, but she did have deformities, like her feet weren't quite developed. And he was still in school making this movie, Eraserhead being essentially a student film, where his friends all kind of got together and made it for the love of it. And it took them 5 years to put it together. And during this time, David's father said, David, you should probably give up this whole art thing. It's time to grow up and, embrace responsibility. And, he resisted that. And isn't the world a better place? Because he did, because he resisted that. He stayed true to himself. He continued to make movies. He continued to make his art. He continued to make things with his hands. Like you watch Eraserhead, and how many films can you think of where the director is not only the director, but he's the producer, he's the writer, he's working on the sets, he's creating props, and doing this all with his own hands, and he's also developing the soundtrack. I mean, John Carpenter maybe comes to mind as another like Renaissance man type filmmaker, albeit very different genre-wise. But it's an increasingly rare thing, and I think it's even rarer now than ever. And, Lynch himself even admitted that that's part of the reason why the movie took 5 years to make. But, this film, obviously the success of it, particularly its association with like the midnight movie phenomenon, movies like Pink Flamingos by John Waters, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, El Topo, the Alejandro Jodorowsky film. He was kind of embraced by this whole idea of, let's bring people together under the guise that you are going to have an experience you won't forget in a darkened theater at midnight tonight. And this led to him making the film Elephant Man, which is, oh my God, one of the sweetest and most heartbreaking films ever. And it's almost marketed as like a monster movie or an exploitation film. And when you watch it, it becomes a movie about otherness. And, some might say that John Merrick, the Elephant Man, so to speak, is a freak. But the way that the movie portrays it, he's like the most normal person in the movie, and everyone else is the freak for trying to exploit him or use them for capitalist gains or abuse him. And that's a movie that I think showed his heart even more than Eraserhead did, and put him on the map as a filmmaker and introduced a lot of people. And he was getting offers from people like George Lucas, who's another, obviously a big favorite of mine. He was getting offers to make like Return of the Jedi, which he turned down for Dune, which is a flawed classic in my opinion. But to me, a movie that kind of encapsulates all that David Lynch is about is probably Blue Velvet, because he obviously has an affection for Americana and showing that idyllic 50s aesthetic that probably lives in a lot of people of his generation's memory, because the reality of it was much darker, but he does show the darker reality. That opening shot where you see the white picket fence and the beautiful flowers growing, and then the camera pans down and you see the bugs in the grass. And that is to me like the quintessential David Lynch image. It's the celebration of, the idyllic Americana, with the dirt, the corruption, everything under the surface that people are hiding and don't want to talk about. And I feel like that's a film that reveals that. But, I even love his later work. Somebody like Quentin Tarantino talks about how he just wanted to make 10 really great films and that be his legacy, and he didn't want any decline in quality. And I feel that David Lynch managed to do that. Like a later work of his, and I know I'm talking about a movie that's 28 years old, but a later work of his that resonates with me quite a bit is Lost Highway. And that's a film that when I watch it, it's sort of endlessly discoverable, because it so consistently defies any kind of concrete explanation about what's going on, that I can return to it many, many times. And it's about a lot of like male rage and insecurity, and how a lot of that is dealt with or not dealt with. But a film like Mulholland Drive is an absolute masterpiece. Like I could show that film, and here we're taking with like Mulholland Drive. Here we're taking like the Hollywood system itself, and showing, oh, here's the dreams. Let's go to Hollywood and make a beautiful life among the stars and among our heroes. And then there's like a horrific trash monster lurking behind the diner. And that film all being about the corruption of Hollywood's beautiful image. That's a theme he returned to in Inland Empire. But I mentioned Twin Peaks earlier, and that to me as a series is about dealing with grief. And if there's one thing I could leave you with, especially if you are a David Lynch fan like myself, I have gotten myself through a lot by rewatching Twin Peaks. And I think that show is essentially about dealing with grief and learning to see, it's almost like an inverse of Blue Velvet. It's like taking the darkness and then showing the light out of the darkness. Learning to laugh at some of the craziness that life has to offer. So, I kind of feel like maybe I've exhausted all that I wanted to say. Again, this is very formal, like I didn't prepare for it like I normally would. But I just want to put this out there because this is a loss that is affecting me on a much deeper level than most celebrity losses do, simply because, David Lynch taught me how to enjoy creating. And, that is the reward. He always used to say, like, once you finish a film, that's when the heartbreak begins. And what he was trying to say was, find joy in the process of making, because some of that is going to translate into the work you do. If you make work in a state of depression and anxiety, it might still be worthwhile work, but there's something about making art from a place of joy that can really resonate with others, and that's what he always taught me, was to enjoy the work. I'm curious what you folks have to say. I mean, I don't know how much traction this is going to have among my subscribers, because, a lot of people are like Jethro Tull people or King Crimson people, Genesis people. And, in a lot of ways, that's almost the exact opposite of the kind of art we're talking about here. But he's still somebody that is very important to me. And discovering his work opened me up even further to the world of cinema, and I became a bona fide cinema addict. Not only seeing all of his films, but discovering again the work of David Cronenberg or Federico Fellini, Ingmar Bergman, Akira Kurosawa, John Waters. Like, this was all his work is what opened me up to cinema at large and made it approachable to me. And I can't run out of, I just will never run out of things to say about the way this man has inspired me, and will continue to do so. I'm going to rewatch all of the films. I do it once a year anyway. And I saw Eraserhead again last night, and it perhaps resonated with me differently, but I was like laughing and crying simultaneously, because it is so funny at times, but you can also see the man's soul in those pictures, in those images. So if you're watching this video, let me know if David Lynch's filmography has affected you, if his philosophy on creativity has affected you in any way, like it has with me. Let me know. Make this a space for the grieving to communicate. I think that would be a really nice thing to do. All right, that's it for me for today. The next video is the Jethro Tull live ranking. That's still coming out on Monday, so look for that. Once again, my name's Ian, and you'll see me and hear from me real soon. All right, bye-bye.